Something extraordinary is happening in Miami right now, and if you haven't been paying attention, you need to stop whatever you're doing, because what's unfolding at the Miami Open is the kind of story that tennis fans will be talking about for years. There's a name echoing across every practice court, every press room, every fan conversation at Hard Rock Stadium, and that name is Alex. Not just whispered with cautious optimism the way people talk about promising youngsters.
No.
This name is being spoken with the kind of reverence and electric disbelief usually reserved for the sport's absolute legends. Alex is about to walk onto that court at midnight tomorrow and do something that has the entire city of Miami completely stunned, because every analyst, every seasoned observer, and frankly every honest soul who has watched her play this week is pointing toward the same jaw-dropping conclusion. She is going to dismantle Laura Siegemund so completely, so ruthlessly, and so beautifully that the tennis world will never quite look at this sport the same way again. Now, before you roll your eyes and call this hyperbole, stay with me, because once I break down exactly what's been happening on these courts, once you understand the tactical reality of this matchup and the level Alex is currently operating at, you're going to feel that same electric chill running down your spine that everyone here in Miami is already feeling. This isn't blind hype. This is a story with evidence, and it's a story that starts long before tomorrow's midnight tip-off. Let's go back to the beginning of this tournament, because context matters enormously here. When Alex stepped onto the grounds at the start of the Miami Open, there was already buzz around her. She'd been showing flashes of something genuinely special, moments in matches where you'd catch yourself leaning forward in your seat, squinting slightly like you couldn't quite believe what your eyes were telling you. But flashes are one thing. Sustained dominance is something else entirely. What she has produced in this tournament isn't a highlight reel. It's a statement, a prolonged, methodical, and at times breathtaking statement about who she is and what she's becoming. The way she has navigated the brutal Miami conditions, the thick, humid air that turns every long rally into a war of attrition, the slow, heavy courts that demand an almost inhuman level of physical conditioning, she hasn't just survived it. She has looked completely at home in it, like the heat and the grind are actually her natural habitat. And while other players have visibly wilted under the Miami sun, Alex has gotten sharper, hungrier, more precise with every single match. That trajectory matters. When a player peaks mid-tournament rather than grinding through on fumes, it tells you something profound about their physical and mental foundation. Alex's draw brings her to Laura Siegemund tomorrow, and this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating, because on paper this should be a difficult match for a young, aggressive baseliner. Siegemund is not some straightforward opponent you can simply overpower with big hitting. She is wily, experienced, and tactically one of the most sophisticated players on the entire tour. She has built a career on making younger, harder-hitting players look confused and frustrated. She slices. She drops. She angles. She comes forward at unexpected moments and takes the court away from you before you've even realized what she's doing. She has beaten players far more highly ranked than her current position would suggest, because she understands the geometry of this sport at a level that most players simply don't. She is exactly the type of opponent who has historically given raw, powerful players fits. So when the overwhelming consensus forming around Miami is that Alex won't just beat her but will absolutely blow her off the court, that tells you everything about how dramatically Alex's game has evolved. Because this isn't a prediction based on power alone. It's a prediction rooted in the realization that Alex has developed answers to every single question Siegemund is capable of asking. Let's start with the most foundational element of Alex's game right now, that left-handed forehand. There's a reason players and coaches around the tour talk about it almost in hushed tones. The spin she generates is genuinely absurd. Not just heavy in the way that makes rallies slightly uncomfortable. We're talking about a ball that dips viciously at the baseline, kicks up sharply after the bounce, and drives opponents so deep behind the court that they're essentially playing from the advertising boards. For someone like Siegemund, who absolutely needs to take the ball early and at a comfortable height to execute her trademark angles and approaches, that kind of forehand is a nightmare. She cannot set up her net game if she's constantly being pushed back and jammed by heavy topspin into her backhand corner. The geometry of her offense requires time and space, and Alex's forehand systematically eliminates both. But here's the part that genuinely sets this matchup apart from what you might expect. The obvious counter to a powerful young baseliner like Alex would be to push low slices into her backhand, mess with the rhythm, draw impatient errors. That's traditionally been the playbook for crafty veterans against hard-hitting youngsters. Siegemund is a master of exactly this approach. The thing is, Alex has spent serious time solving that exact puzzle. Her footwork around her backhand has become elite. When she sees that low skidding slice coming, she doesn't lunge or panic or force a desperate reply. She gets low, uses her core, and either resets the point with an incredibly heavy looping ball of her own or, increasingly, she drives it cleanly down the line for an outright winner. She has learned to turn Siegemund's favorite survival weapon into something she actually feeds on. Think about what that means for a moment. The shot Siegemund relies on most to stay in matches against power players is now actively working against her. That's not just a tactical advantage. That's the kind of asymmetry that collapses opponents psychologically, and it happens faster than most people realize. The serve dimension adds another compelling layer to this story. Alex's delivery has genuinely evolved this tournament. The velocity is noticeably up, but more importantly, the placement has become surgical. That lefty slice out wide on the advantage side is particularly devastating. It pulls opponents so far off the court that Alex is stepping into open spaces before the return has even bounced, dictating the very first shot of the point with absolute authority. Against Siegemund, whose serve, while smart, doesn't carry the kind of pace that pushes Alex back, the return game is going to be incredibly revealing. Alex has been stepping inside the baseline to return all week, taking the ball aggressively on the rise, essentially stealing time from opponents before they can establish any rhythm whatsoever. When Siegemund rolls in a second serve, and she will roll in second serves, Alex is going to be in a position to absolutely punish it. Completely eliminating the precious seconds, Siegemund needs to set up her intricate net approaches and drop shot combinations. Now let's talk about the physical reality of a midnight match in Miami, because this is a dimension of a story that doesn't get nearly enough attention. This tournament is known as the 5th Grand Slam for a reason. The conditions are genuinely grueling. The cumulative toll of playing multiple matches in heavy, humid air does something to your body that no amount of pre-match warm-up can fully counteract. Late in the tournament, on a court under the lights at midnight, the physical gap between a young athlete in peak condition and a veteran managing their body through a long, demanding season becomes genuinely visible. Alex is not just young. She has clearly invested deeply in her physical preparation specifically for these conditions. Her recovery between matches has been remarkable. She bounces back to the same explosive level every single time, and in long rallies, in the moments when the heat has settled into your bones and your legs start sending quiet distress signals to your brain, that's when the gap becomes a chasm. Siegemund's game depends on precise timing and delicate touch. The drop shot, the angle volley, the perfectly weighted slice. All of these shots require an almost complete absence of fatigue-related hesitation. When you're tired, your hand is a fraction of a second late. The drop shot lands slightly too long. The angle is slightly too wide. And against Alex, who is quick enough and hungry enough to run down almost everything and turn defense into attack, those tiny margins become catastrophic. Psychologically, this match is fascinating and honestly a little uncomfortable to think about if you're in Siegemund's corner. She walks onto that court knowing exactly who she's facing. She feels the energy in the stadium already tilting toward Alex before a single ball has been struck. She knows that her typical game plan, the slow grind, the rhythm disruption, the tactical trickery, is exactly what Alex has been preparing for. So she feels pressure to deviate, to take risks she wouldn't normally take, to attempt drop shots from positions that aren't quite right, to go for lines she'd normally leave alone. That kind of forced aggression born out of tactical desperation is exactly where unforced errors live. And Alex, who carries herself with this almost unsettling calm on court, this icy, focused stillness that refuses to get rattled by anything, she will absorb every forced error and capitalize on it without mercy. There's a specific quality that the very best players share, and Alex has it in abundance right now. She doesn't just win points. She makes opponents feel like their best efforts aren't quite good enough. She makes you feel like the court is simultaneously too small and too large. Too small because her ball is always finding the corners, always finding your discomfort zones. Too large because when she defends, when she slides wide and retrieves what should be an outright winner and somehow redirects it back with pace, you start to feel like there's no safe place to hit. That feeling, that growing helplessness, is what the people here in Miami are predicting for Siegemund tomorrow night. It isn't cruelty. It's just what happens when a player at the absolute peak of their powers meets an opponent whose weapons, brilliant as they are, have been specifically neutralized. The atmosphere at midnight adds its own wild energy to this story. There's something about night tennis that strips away all the social pleasantries of a daytime match. The crowd is different. More intense, more emotionally invested, more willing to make noise and be part of the drama. The lights create this almost theatrical bubble around the court, and performers who thrive in theatrical settings, who feed on atmosphere and rise to the occasion of a packed stadium, those players have an enormous advantage. Every indication from this tournament suggests that Alex is precisely that kind of performer. She hasn't just coped with the big match atmosphere. She has grown inside it, expanded to fill the available space, and then some. The harder the moment, the brighter she seems to shine. That quality is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable, and it is exactly what tomorrow night demands. Here's what I want you to watch for when that match starts. Pay attention to the first service game. Watch how Alex positions herself for the return, how far inside the baseline she stands, how early she commits to taking the ball. Watch whether Siegemund double faults under that pressure. Watch the rally exchanges when Alex's forehand finds Siegemund's backhand corner, and observe how deep behind the baseline Siegemund is forced to retreat. These early patterns will tell the whole story, because once that dynamic establishes itself, once Siegemund realizes her slice isn't disrupting Alex the way it disrupts others, once she feels the pace and the weight of those deep forehands and understands she cannot manufacture the time she needs to attack, the psychological component of this match will begin to accelerate in a very decisive direction. The truly remarkable thing about what we're witnessing in Miami isn't just that a young player is winning matches. Tennis has always had young players win matches. What's remarkable is the manner, the completeness of it. The fact that Alex isn't just winning on her strengths, she's winning by neutralizing opponents' strengths. She's not hitting through problems. She's solving them, reading them, anticipating them before they've fully formed. That's the leap that separates a very good player from a potentially great one, and Alex is making that leap in real time, in one of the biggest tournaments on the calendar, in front of the entire watching world. The players at the top of this tour, the ones who have been building their legacies for years, they are watching this tournament very carefully. And if Alex delivers tomorrow what everyone in Miami is anticipating, those conversations in locker rooms and coaches' meetings are going to shift. The plans and the game plans and the long-term strategic thinking will adjust to account for a new variable, a new force that cannot simply be managed or contained through experience alone. That is what it means to genuinely arrive in professional tennis. Not just to win a round, not just to beat a good opponent, but to reach a level where your existence changes how the entire field thinks about the game. Alex is on the doorstep of that moment, and tomorrow at midnight, on the biggest stage the non-slam circuit has to offer, she is going to walk through it. The shock that has gripped the city, that sharp intake of breath you hear when people talk about what she's doing, will transform into something else entirely after tomorrow. It will become the origin story. The moment people point back to when they talk about how it all began, when the sport truly understood what it had in Alexandra, the player they call Alex, the player who arrived in Miami as a fascinating story and is leaving as something altogether different. Set your alarm. This is the one you don't want to miss.